Good afternoon, grinders. Welcome to the show that is based on I think it's crunch time. I think it's a show. It's sort of grinders live, sort of free crunch time. It's sort of the pregame show, sort of whatever. We got an early slate, right? We got a 6-game early slate. We got the 4-game late slate later tonight. You'll get free crunch time for that. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka Blender at Blender HD. If you want to follow me on Twitter, join with me with the 100K winner from last night on DraftKings. It's Dave Potts. Cheese is good. That had the 5-2-1 of a very similar lineup that I came in like 28th place, Cheese, with like your lineup, but just with like instead of Morton, it had Heaney, and instead of Upton, it had some guy that didn't score enough points.
Yeah, that was I didn't really expect the Braves to score that many runs, but it just kind of kept going.
We had the late night hammer. You had the the 2 Muncie dongs and
the Muncie Seager was those were the only 2 players really on the whole slate anywhere that I was overweight on. So yeah, those guys are good at baseball every day. All the Dodgers all day, every day. Basically.
So for today's slate, obviously if you're in the YouTube chat, people sometimes show up in our Discord, our premium Discord for crunch time. We're now in the free YouTube chat, so feel free to come over there so we could see your questions. But we've got the guys in the chat as usual. Hit the thumbs up button, give us some likes, hit the subscribe button if you're new, hit the notification bell to know when we go live on this channel. Pitching, I haven't looked at Fanduel today, so let's first. Is the Fanduel slate the same as the DraftKings slate?
It does not have the Phillies game, so you know there's no Zach Wheeler. It's the big difference.
Okay, and then we don't have the Phillies lineup yet.
Correct.
Okay, and that's the only lineup we don't have.
Yep.
Okay, so basically on Fanduel, the top pitcher on the slate would be McClanahan.
Yeah, so it's basically McClanahan, Cease, and then down to Garcia. Like the pricing is about the same too. Like McClanahan's 10K, Cease is 9K, Garcia's 8.3. So you drop $1,000, you step down, you want to go. But McClanahan is pretty easy to fit, and he should be the chalk there.
Right. I got the sense some people in our Discord that play on Fanduel more. I tend to shift from site to site depending on how I feel. Mm-hmm. That the pricing is soft enough on Fanduel that like you could essentially play whoever you want, no matter what stack you're playing. From a strategic consideration, in the large field tournaments on slates like that, I'm more inclined to just leave 2,000 on the table. Like play 4 4s, 4 3s, because you'll end up with like just like all the Bryce Harper. Like everyone's lineup will look the same because they're gonna just jam in because they can. So do you think a viable strategy just holistically? I'm not talking about cash games, just GPPs in general. That just because you can fit in all the expensive bats doesn't necessarily mean that's like the highest EV move you can make when everyone else could do the same anyway.
Yeah, on the small Fanduel slates, when there's a stud pitcher, it's different because they do price a lot of guys up to like 11.5 or something. Like if Wheeler's was on this slate, he'd probably be 11.5. But when all their pitchers are down at like 10 or lower, then you can pretty much play whoever you want. I actually like Cease better than McClanahan on Fanduel, straight up. And you might end up leaving the salary. But the good thing there, I don't think, like, you don't have to mess with Chris Flexen or cheaper on Fanduel. But definitely, yeah, leave some salary. You don't just have to jam, especially so Harper's not on the FanDuel slate and Ohtani is not on the FanDuel slate.
They screwed up Ohtani because they left him as a pitcher. And
yeah. So if you're filling up salary, you'll end up with like 100% Cruz, Lau, and like one of Abreu or Olsen or Eloy. And it'll just be real that everyone will have the same lineup. So definitely leave some salary in a good amount of lineups on FanDuel.
Okay, now on DraftKings, pitching wise, I mean, because you have to play two of them, and depending on the prices, depends on what the expense of your stacks. I still think most lineups it's gonna be like, if you're playing cash games, you're probably playing Wheeler plus McClanahan, right?
Yeah, there's no reason not to play two of the top guys. I think it's close-ish enough if you prefer Cease or even Louis Garcia over McClanahan, but in cash games, I would personally lean Wheeler McClanahan.
And the cheap nonsense would be Minor or Flexen.
Yep.
To quote your words from the musings,
yeah,
you're always looking at cheap nonsense. If you had to choose,
and those guys aren't even really nonsense. Like, they're both actually, pretty good pitchers.
But like, Flexen has a better matchup, but he's not really much of a strikeout pitcher.
Right.
And Minor gets more strikeouts, but he has a worse matchup against the Astros.
Yeah. I like Minor better. Even not accounting for the price difference. It's close-ish. And I know you'll mention Bumgarner. He's also close-ish, right around that same price range. Like, all three of those guys are really similar type of pitchers. Flexen's the lowest strikeout guy, the better matchup. Bumgarner's a little higher in strikeouts, a little worse matchup, and then Minor's a little higher in strikeouts, a little worse matchup. You just kind of like ladder on either side. But I do like Minor the best out of that group. Right,
and Minor's not going to be 6% is owned.
No,
we have him 6 in the ownership, but he's going to be like 20 to 25%.
Yeah, I'm thinking 20. Yeah,
I think Wheeler is going to be 50 plus. McClanahan may be like in the 40 to 45 range. Cease similarly 35 to 40. Then Luis Garcia may be down 20 to 25. And then like Flexen and Minor make up kind of that range. And like everyone else is.
Yeah. I think basically be pretty much what you just said. You take a little bit of McClanahan's away and a little bit of Flexen's away and give it to Minor with a little bit to Bumgarner. That's where it'll land.
Matt Andrzejewski in the chat says, I understand leaving salary on the table is viable on FanDuel today, but is it also viable on DK to leave 1,000 to 1,500 on the table? He says some of his lineups have on DK leave over 1,000 right now. Me personally, in a 6-game slate, if you're stacking, I still think that's fine.
Yeah, so I have some 2,000s left on DraftKings. To me, the only difference, like with the bats, if you're stacking, I think you can leave any amount of salary. The only place I'm not leaving it, like, if you were talking like $3,000 and you have Flexen and you could get up to Cease, I wouldn't leave it there. But as far as hitting, yeah, I'm fine leaving 2,000 and not going up to Harper or Ohtani to sacrifice a guy in your stack.
Right, because that's essentially what you'd be doing. It's like, instead of playing Ohtani on DraftKings, you wouldn't even be playing a 2K hitter. You'd be playing a good $4,500 hitter. You'd have, looking at the salaries, like you'd have a one-off, let's scroll all the way up. You'd have Eloy instead of Ohtani and leave 1,500. Right. But you wouldn't be going down to like, I'm gonna play the Peters on the Rangers and just leave 4,000 when you could have gotten Ohtani, Marte, Harper, and Cruz, any of these Alvarez, any of these outfielders. Yeah. It's more of you're leaving yourself leeway so you don't have like as duplicated a combination of your lineup, but you're just not, you're not stacking you're not doing Texas plus Arizona 5-3 and then playing Bumgarner plus Flexen and leaving like 12,000 on the table.
I like that. I got to build that one real quick. Yeah, no, yeah, but exactly what you said. Or like if you have a Rosarena at 4,500 with a couple of Tampa bats, doesn't have to be a full stack. Yeah, leave him instead of Ohtani. Like you said with the White Sox, yeah, play Eloy instead of Ohtani. I'm
just saying a good bat because some people take that as I'm gonna just pick a $3,000 batter that really they're 3,000 for a reason. It's more the fact that there are $4,500 to $5,000 players that are going under-owned, that you just play a better batter. Just you've already left 1,500 on the table. That's good enough.
Yep.
B-Shot in the chat. Geez, if you need a cheap starting pitcher in DK single entry but are already playing some chalk, would you take Flexen over Minor? So I think they're both going to be about similar.
Yeah, like ownership wise, I think it's a toss up. I prefer Minor slightly. It's one of those you're really unlikely to win or lose based on which one of Flexen and Minor you take. Minor's got, I would say, a little lower floor, a little higher ceiling.
That's why you take Bumgarner. That's why you do what I'm doing and take Bumgarner.
Yeah, I think I would play Bumgarner before Flexen if you had that extra $400.
But it's not. I mean, Flexen projects better. Flexen, truthfully, I think is a better pitcher. It's just that the ownership difference is just too dramatic. I think like if Flexen is going to be 18% owned, Bumgarner is going to be 6% owned. But the difference between Flexen and Minor, if Minor is going to be 24% owned, it's just like the range of outcomes between these pitchers aren't that wide that like Bumgarner should be 3 times less owned. He's more like, I mean, he's the lowest projected out of the bunch, but from a range of outcomes perspective. So if Bumgarner goes out and gives up 8 runs to the Phillies, don't say that I liked him. It's just I liked his ownership.
Right. Oh, I will say that you liked him.
Well, you should see some of the lineups I've made. If there's chaos, if people are upset about today's slate, I'm probably doing really well. Right? And it was still I was still making lineups, and I still had plenty of Wheeler. It's hard to make it, especially the pitching. It's like when you're stacking these cheaper teams. Like for instance, I have a lineup stacking Baltimore against McClanahan. Like Mancini's not even in the lineup, right?
He is.
Oh, he is. Okay.
Yeah.
But I mean,
but even so, you can't fill it up.
Right. You just can't, like, it ends up like any lineup that has Baltimore has to have Wheeler in it because like, and it still leaves like 800 on the table. So like, why not play the best projected pitcher in that spot?
And that happens a lot because I mean, I like both the Angels and the Tigers. Other than Ohtani, they're super cheap. The Mariners are super cheap. Like all these kind of teams that it costs nothing to stack them, but I still want some. Yeah.
So before we get into stacks, let's just briefly go through kind of like cash game core pieces. If you're playing double ups on DraftKings or FanDuel, like what are the like the core players that you'd have in your life? We went over the pitchers, but as far as like at the high end, at the low end, like I look at DraftKings, I see like a $3,100 Upton. Like what are those guys where it's like you could add there's choices everywhere else, but like maybe 4 or 5 guys that like that's pretty much part of a cash bill.
Yeah. So the 2 cheap guys that I tagged on DraftKings are Upton and Lewis Robert, 31 and 3,200 on DraftKings. I think Brandon Lau is a guy you need to have, partly not just because you have to have him as much as almost all the good players on the outfield. So to get him at second base, that's sort of my next building block there. Really,
you want to go cheap at second, you play Yanni Hernandez.
You can.
Apparently, the top point per dollar infield play with the bat. I was struggling to not get enough of him.
I actually wasn't kidding at all that I like him. I actually prefer him at third base because third base doesn't have a play as good as Brandon Lau. So I would rather play Lau at second and punt third if I had to do that with either Aledmus Diaz as a pseudo punt at 33 or Yanni at 23.
Shortstop. Are we paying up for like Ohtani or Harper? I mean, Ohtani's.
I think you should get Ohtani. I think you should get Ohtani. So basically, your choice. And I was kind of torn on how to tag it, like core play wise. If you do Robert and Upton, you do either Austin Meadows or like Cruz, or go all the way up to Ohtani. Or you could try, if you don't want to play 2 expensive pitchers, you put Ohtani at first. Go Meadows, Robert, Upton. And then you would be playing like a Yanni Hernandez or something, which I'm totally fine with. But like Upton is, to me, I mean, not Upton, Ohtani is way ahead of Harper and really way ahead of anyone else as top play on the slate. So I would be fine to punt 2 infield positions in order to get him.
And we can see here in lineup HQ, your cheese is good core plays. If you're a premium member, you get this. You get all the tags. You get Cheese's musings. You get the consensus value rankings. You get the expert survey. You get the premium Discord. You get the premium crunch time shows. So sign up. Click on the link in the description. Get $10 off your first month. So stacks wise. Okay, so we're getting into GPPs wise. Would you consider the top stack on the slate from a projection and like chance of being the highest scoring team to be the Tampa against Jorge Lopez?
Yes, by a pretty big margin. If you're just who is most likely to score the most runs and most DFS points, it's definitely Tampa.
But then do you think, how chalky do you think they're going to necessarily be? I mean, because you have Cruz at 5,200, Lowe at 5,100, Meadows. I mean, this is not cheap.
They're the only team on the board that you can't easily stack, just going 1 through 5. So I don't think they'll be like massive chalk.
But I think those lineups, like Cheese, those lineups are more likely to have like minor or flex in it.
Right.
Almost like
every
be able
full
to play
Tampa
this lineup with McClanahan plus Wheeler.
Right. And so my lean there is I like the pitching a little better than I like Tampa chalk. Like if I only had one lineup, I would want Wheeler plus one of Cease McClanahan before I would want that 1 through 5 Tampa stack.
Okay, just to go back to pitching, because Michael Dompier is asking about if Quintana's on a pitch count. According to the bat, he's projected at 63 pitches. Do you know anything different?
That's a max. I'd be stunned if he gets that many. Like he's been pitching out of the bullpen for a month at 1 or 2 innings. So if he gets 60, I think he'd be lucky.
Okay, so I mean the bat at 63. He
could get 63, but yes,
to me he's out of play. To me, I didn't even include him.
Yeah, he's definitely on a pitch count, and to me, yeah, unplayable.
Okay, so outside of Tampa, which should be like the highest owned stack, what stacks are you looking at in your lineups?
So where it's interesting, the better teams are facing the better pitchers. And I still kind of prefer picking on the weaker pitchers here, which puts me on the Angels, Tigers, and Mariners before the White Sox and Astros. I think the White Sox and Astros will be the next most popular because they got bigger name players. But I still just want to pick on Matt Manning. So I would say the Angels are probably my favorite next stack.
Well, I think they're going to be this. I think the Angels are actually be the second most owned stack. I think it's going to go from Tampa Bay to to the Angels, then the White Sox because of Robert batting second, and you have some cheap pieces in there. I think the Astros will be fourth because Mike Minor is going to get 25% ownership, so that'll decrease the Astros ownership. And the Phillies against Bumgarner, their ownership is going to go down slightly because they don't have the lineups out.
They're going to be totally overlooked. Yeah, that's a good stack based on anytime it's the last game and the lineup's not out. So on the Angels, I don't like Ohtani and Upton are going to be massive chalk. Right. I don't know if anything else after that really is or not. It wouldn't stun me, but I pretty much think it's a 2-player chalk and then ownership's not a thing.
Right. Because I don't think people will go up for $4,900 Fletcher or $4,400 Stassi or $4,100 Iglesias at the bottom of the order. I think you're more likely if you see an Angels 5-man, it's going to be Ohtani, Goslin, Walsh, Upton, and one of Adele or March or some type of lineup like that, which is affordable to do. But yeah, most of it's going to be concentrated on Ohtani and Upton.
But essentially, and kind of what I hear you saying, really other than Tampa, I think it's spread out fairly evenly. Other than the Phillies will come in, other than the Phillies will be on the low end.
Right. Do you want to know what stacks that I like today?
I do.
What stacks do you think I have?
Well, you should have the Phillies.
I actually have 0 Phillies because I'm playing on Bumgarner.
You should have both. Come on, you know this. You probably
I only have 30
Oakland.
lineups today. If I had 100, I would have some Phillies.
You probably have Oakland.
Yes.
You probably have Houston.
Yes. Those are 2 out of 3. I have Tampa Bay also. So I understand I do have the Rays, even with them being chalk, but you picked Oakland and Houston are the two most exposed in my lineups, primarily because of the pitchers that they're facing are going to have ownership. So I'd rather, and they're good hitting teams. I mean,
right.
like,
Yeah, that's the whole trick of the slate to me is, do you want good hitting teams against pretty good pitchers or worse hitting teams against worse pitchers? And I don't think it's wrong at all to want the better hitting teams.
But it's not crazy to me that like I do have some Orioles and I do have some Diamondbacks today.
Yeah. Orioles for sure. I have 150, so I have a couple Diamondbacks. So this size of slate, I'm gonna have a couple of anybody, but the Orioles I actually like. I mean, a pretty good bit. And back to that whole, they're so cheap. It actually hurts their ownership. Normally you would say they get more owned because they're so cheap, but on this slate, it's almost hurts their ownership that they're too cheap.
Right. And you'll be leveraged against, the 40+% that have McClanahan. And the thing is if you're playing the Orioles, you're most likely playing like Wheeler plus Garcia up top or Wheeler plus Cease, that type of lineup. We may have one of these slates. You played the early slate yesterday where Molly gets blown up by the Cubs and ends up being one of the best pitchers on the slate anyway, right? With 5 points.
That was a weird slate. Yeah. You basically just didn't want any pitchers. But I mean, we're going to get one of these top guys is going to have a good start today, if not several of them.
Well, I'm just hoping to pick the one that doesn't and have the stack against on these smaller slates. Maybe it's a cop out to say that like I don't have to make a choice because I'm playing 30 lineups. That I'm like, okay, I'm going to play four Orioles against McClanahan. I'm going to play 4 Diamondbacks lineups against Wheeler. I'm going to play 6 Oakland lineups against Cease and 6 Astros lineups against Minor. And then I just hope as long as some part of the chalk fails, like I got a chance. It's those slates where if all the chalk smashes, that's when I look down and I go, what happened to my green number?
Yeah.
Is there a number there?
This chalk is not so good that you expect it not to. Like one of these chalk pitchers will have a bad game. These aren't like Hall of Famers here.
But I think the highest variance spot is the A's White Sox game. I think Cease is more of the type of pitcher out of those top pitchers that, especially the Oakland lineup, is not bad. They have good hitters in their lineup, power hitters. That Cease could have 36 points today. He could also have -16.
And it's the only semi-decent hitting spot, like ballpark wise.
Or in Chicago. Kansas City isn't bad.
Yeah. Well, but for home runs more.
Right.
Which is what you want from Oakland. Like if you're playing Oakland, you're hoping, Olsen and Chapman kind of hit home runs anyway. That's like you're really much playing for power. That's a sentence. Really much you are playing for power.
If you have any questions, obviously you could post them in the YouTube chat. If you're on FanDuel, we still have the single entry series going on. So play that. Typically they're flatter payout structure contests in the top 4. If you place, you get into the $40,000 final. So if you're on FanDuel, is there anything on FanDuel? Because like I said, I'm focused so much on DraftKings today. I'm not even looking at FanDuel. With the fact that there's no Wheeler and the fact that there's no Ohtani, is anything that we said for DraftKings other than obviously the Phillies are going to go way under-owned on the FanDuel slate, being that they're not on it. Is there anything that's dramatically different?
The big difference is it's much easier to fit that chalky Tampa stack. Like you can go Lau, Cruz, Meadows. So I think we're going to get, in like single entries, you'll be going to be like 50% on those top Tampa bats.
But do you think on FanDuel that you get more value if you want to play the contrarian game, more value on the Orioles and the A's stacks?
Yes.
Because Wheeler's not on and Cease and McClanahan are going to be super owned.
Yes. Like I think anyone other than Tampa, just because of the way the pricing is, because you do have to leave salary. If you're doing anything like that, Baltimore, you can't, like on DraftKings, you can find a way to use the salary if that's the thing you want to do. You almost can't even do it on FanDuel. So anything other than Tampa and maybe like adding in like Abreu and Jimenez, you're pretty much off the board. And I guess Altuve, Correa will get some ownership. But any of these secondary teams that are cheap, your Angels, your Mariners, your Tigers, your A's, your Orioles, yeah, they're way off the radar.
Eric S says Cheese always looks like he's getting his high school linebacker photo for the yearbook.
Thank you.
Did you play sports in high school?
Tennis. Do I look like I'm getting my tennis photo taken?
Are there tennis photos?
Oh yeah, I have tennis photos.
Do you get a letter jacket for tennis?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Of course. I'm cool.
Pierre Doda in the YouTube chat, best catcher punt. And there's a ton of them.
Yep. So if you're not playing up to Real Muto, depending on what you would say is a punt, Francisco Mejia at 2,900 would be my favorite. As far as an actual real cheap punt, Jason Castro or Jonah Heim. But really, I think Mejia at 29 is the best sort of cheap value catcher.
Do you think you're playing a value catcher in DK Cash, or you're just paying up for like, just give me Real Muto?
At this point, Real Muto is the one guy I would be nervous if he's in the lineup or not until we see it. So if we don't get a lineup in the next 5 minutes, honestly, I'd play Mejia because you don't want to. I don't really want to pay for Perez, and if you lock in Real Muto and then he's not in the lineup, then you just kind of really messed up with salary.
Well, then you play Andrew Knapp and leave all the money on the table.
Yeah, in a cash game, that's not the ideal play.
Right. Or you could move to other guy. I mean, you could end up with and switch a bunch of players around. Yeah, but yeah, that's not optimal to do.
So I would personally go Mejia.
J10, better one off Miggy or Moreland on DK single entry.
I guess Moreland.
I lean towards Miggy because I think he's gonna swing for the fences until he gets 500 against a lefty like Quintana.
I mean, but I agree. Moreland swings for the fences every at bat his whole career, right. So it doesn't. Yeah,
but it's more the sentimental thing of that they're playing in Detroit and everyone's every at bat everyone's on their feet. The big thing that says 499 on the back, and like you have to think that effect. It's not like, oh, I'm going to slap a single so I drive a run in from second. They're the Tigers. They ain't going anywhere.
That's mean. That's rude.
Right. Or are they making the playoffs? Are they going anywhere? No.
Oh, you don't know. Season's not over. I like both guys. I just playing the blender ownership game. They both have home run upside. Which one's lower owned? That's Mitch Moreland. That's what I've learned from you. Right.
It given the choice. If your lineup is chalkier, play the low owned guy. If your lineup is already contrarian, play the higher projected guy. I mean, like really, that's the answer.
Yes.
B shot QQ DK single entry Mountcastle for first base one off because of leverage. Hashtag the L word.
So for me, he's behind both Cabrera and Moreland. So,
and I think similarly owned.
Yeah, at least to Moreland, he'll be about the same. So, right. I like him only really in a stack or mini stack.
Right, but I mean, he does have extra value because you obviously would not be having McClanahan in your lineup with Mountcastle. So right. Mountcastle's points are more negatively correlated to 50+% of the lineups in the contest. So there is a weight that you put on it, but it's not like the be all end all. So yes, if Miggy and who are we talking about? Moreland. Like Moreland, there's leverage on Moreland also because Cease is going to have not as much as McClanahan, but some. Maybe Miggy actually is the worst of all of them because no one's playing Quintana, and if they're all projected the same and owned about the same, you'd rather try to kill other lineups with your player than play Miggy. Am I being too harsh? I was rooting for Miggy before, and now it seems like it doesn't matter if he's swinging for the fences. We're not playing.
That was my initial lean. Like they all have more or less the same home run upside. I lean Moreland.
Donnie Watson in a 400-man contest on DK and Tampa Bay being so chalky. Do you think pairing Cease and Garcia is just dumb to get away from a Wheeler Minor type lineup?
Not at all. No.
But that's what you should be doing. Like, if you want to play Tampa Bay as chalk, you have to find a way to be different than the rest of your lineup. And that's what he described is one way to do so. Another way to do so is, I can still play Wheeler Minor in that lineup, but just like the 3 other spots in your lineup are, not you're playing a 3-man Orioles against McClanahan, right? You have to get really kind of more off the board over there. But which way you do it is almost up to you. Play guys that are playing, right? Play guys that are on the slate. Don't play Ohtani on FanDuel. Do you think people will play Ohtani on FanDuel thinking they're going to get hitting points at the pitcher spot for 10-5?
I mean, somebody will. Yes.
Because it's even too expensive. Like if he was like 4,500 and pitcher eligible, at least that's like, well, maybe I could give it a shot. Maybe they'll credit me for the hitting points. But obviously, you wouldn't want to put hitting points in your pitcher spot. But I guarantee if I was able to download a CSV, I have to assume that Ohtani will be at least 0.1%.
Yeah, someone will play. I mean, someone won't even realize that he's not pitching, and we'll just play him, thinking that he's the pitcher.
Sean V says, I think the Rays truck might be very necessary on the slate. Necessary, must play territory, lock and load. Could get burned without him. Oh, the Orioles pen is so incredibly bad.
That's certainly a viable strategy. Is just say, I'm just going all in on the Rays. They're the best team by such a wide margin. I'm gonna have just every combination of Rays and let other people overthink it. It's totally viable here.
Right. I mean, you could do that. I'm not, but I mean, you could.
Yeah.
I mean, you still have, in your 150 set, even though they're the chalkiest team, I mean, you still have, you're probably still over on the Rays.
Yeah. Yeah, probably so.
You sound very confident in that.
Yeah, they're the best team, but it's not, this is not one of those where I would say, I'm going to do 150 Rays stacks. It's not that good.
Right. Thoughts on the White Sox 3-man with a 3-man Tampa Bay stack with McClanahan and Flexen?
Yes. The White Sox in general, I don't think you have to full stack them. Like, you're kind of playing for home runs with all these guys too. And it's, so yeah, I don't mind the mini stack there.
Shannon Lambert says, based on the early slate yesterday, you should stack against Wheeler. Because we know that they remember yesterday's slate, right? The pitchers know. Yeah. They knew the chalk failed yesterday, so they have they have to continue.
Yes.
DJ Cicero, DKGPP, Howard or Garcia. Is Spencer Howard on your radar today? Is he in any lineups?
No, they feel like he's pretty much maxed at 45 pitches, and they have shown no sign to want him to go any more than that. So no, he's an X for me.
I have I have Mariners, but
yeah,
right. DK Cash from Ryan Henderson, Meadows, Mendick, or Franco Myers. Just to be clear, probably, Franco Myers is the cousin of Oscar Myers.
Then that would actually, I like Franco Myers anyway, but yeah,
right.
It's delicious.
Is Mendick in the lineup? Okay, Mendick's batting 8th. This is how little I know about my lineups. The fact that I'm not even sure who are in the lineups of the teams, because I just pick the teams and just whatever it fills in, it fills in.
Yeah.
Let's see. Go through the YouTube chat. Jay Smooth on FanDuel, Upton one-off or Phillips in a Tampa stack? So I'm assuming he has like a 5. He has on FanDuel, it's like a 4-4 lineup that has Tampa, and then then playing the 4-3-1 with Upton instead.
See, if it was like, I like playing Phillips there because Phillips is not going to be the popular. Like if you're asking play Upton instead of Meadows, maybe like just because of sneakiness, but I like Phillips in a Tampa stack.
It's primarily because of the ownership and the construction type, not because Upton projects better.
Right. Yeah.
There's a GPP question. It's not who's going to do better. Like the Upton version projects better. It's also going to be more owned. You get more value if Phillips does well and Upton doesn't than if Upton does well and Phillips doesn't. And you're sitting there like, I came in 78th place because I did it. If Phillips puts up, 28 points on FanDuel and Upton puts up 3, like you could take first place with that line.
Right. And Phillips hits a lot of grand slams. That's like his thing this year.
At the bottom of the line.
Yep. He has at least 2. I think he has 3.
QQ and DK Cash, do you prefer Correa or Franco?
Franco.
And you have the money. I don't think the money gets you anything. If you go down from Franco to Correa, like where do you put it?
Yeah.
Okay. I think we're caught up to the YouTube chat. This is a 110 lock.
6 minutes to lock.
6 minutes to lock, and we still don't have a Phillies line.
Yeah, and I don't like it. Like, I have no idea if Real Muto's going to play. I have no idea if Didi Gregorius is going to play. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Wouldn't it be a kick in the ass if Harper doesn't play?
Yeah, and it's possible. I mean, I don't know what we're going to get there.
No Real Muto, no Harper, no Gregorius, or they leave Gregorius in. He's a lefty, and then all of a sudden it's like Madison Bumgarner, the nuts.
There you go.
Right, that's what I'm planning for. He's not in every lineup. I'm making it out to like I got him in like I think a quarter of my.
He's your favorite player of all time.
Favorite of all time, all time. Well, I've lost so much money trying to stack against him. I might as well just play him.
Yeah, I mean, he's still a very good real life pitcher. I'm proud of him,
but not a good DFS pitcher. Dude,
no.
Who would you consider a better pitcher, Greinke or Bumgarner?
In real life or DFS?
In real life,
Greinke.
But people think Bumgarner is dust, but he's not dust.
He's not dust at all.
He's just not. He's not 2013
right.
Madison Bumgarner.
He just used to be amazing. Now he's just good.
Right.
Same with Greinke. He used to be amazing. Now he's just good.
Was he ever amazing?
He was amazing in real life. Yes.
I mean, but amazing in the way that like Greg Maddux was amazing.
I mean, so if you take his best 5 years, he's a surefire Hall of Famer. Yes, maybe not greatest pitcher of all time, no, which Greg Maddux is, but like surefire.
I mean, the style of pitcher. I'm talking like back in the day. Like, there's a difference between Greg Maddux and Randy Johnson and Pedro Martinez. Like, Maddux wasn't a strikeout pitcher. He was just like the best, like just real life pitching in all amounts of control and winning games and everything.
Right. Greinke was not Maddux level. No.
Right. But the same style. Greinke, even in his prime, wasn't striking out 12, 14 a game.
Right.
So I think that's why people look at that, especially DFS focused people. We look at those. We look at like someone like Chris Flexen on today's slate going, he sucks. It's like, no, he's actually a good real life pitcher, just that he's not a strikeout pitcher.
Right.
Right. And we look at Bumgarner and Greinke and like those types of guys that way because we play them in DFS and they get 18 points and we go, how do we win with 18 points? It's like, well, baseball teams can win games with pitchers that score 18 DFS points.
This is true.
Okay. Anything else in the YouTube chat?
I just looked up because I didn't want to overstate it. So 2013 to 15, 263, 271, 166 ERAs for Greinke. I mean, that's just flat out elite. Guy was great.
If you had, okay, here's a question. Just since we don't really got we don't got any really questions in the chat. Christopher Ramos, best play on shortstop, FanDuel Cash. Is it Franco?
Yes.
Okay, there you go. Two questions. If someone had to pitch a complete game, like a starting pitcher, complete game, 9 innings, whatever, to save your life in baseball history, who would you choose?
Oh, Greg Maddux.
Really?
Yeah. Now, are we taking for their whole career, or like, can I take one guy?
Yeah, you can take one guy in the prime of what? Right, exactly.
Felix Hernandez.
Really?
Yes. The Felix Hernandez at his best was the most unhittable pitcher. I mean, not that he was striking everyone out, but like no one had a prayer in heck of getting the ball out of the infield. So for me, Felix and Maddux would be way ahead of guys like Pedro Martinez or Sandy Koufax.
Why not Pedro? To me, I would say Pedro over anyone.
I would no
Pedro or Kershaw.
Sure, yeah, I would put Kershaw up there with Maddux and Felix. And I mean, yeah, Pedro Martinez is freaking amazing. Like that's a fine choice too. I would take Pedro for DFS. But complete game, Maddux and Felix are the guys that they get through a complete game on 70 pitches.
Right. I know I know that.
Yeah. Like the answer to your question, is Maddox or Felix. I don't know why you said really?
Right. Because I had this. Because now you're going for the 9 innings, and I'm like,
right.
Well, what if it was only 6 innings?
Okay. See, no, that's a totally different question. Yeah.
Right. Well, that's why. Okay. Let's narrow it down to 6 innings. Now.
Okay.
Now is it a little bit closer?
Yeah. Now it's Pedro Martinez.
Okay. Okay. So now. Okay. Now we got it.
Yeah. The whole point of getting the 9 innings is who can get 9 innings so quick, like so easily and quickly. It's like those guys. But yeah, if we're playing short games, let's just playing 7-inning doubleheaders. Yeah, then I'd take Pedro.
Right. To me, and he's the most unhittable pitcher. How about if you only had to pitch 1 inning?
With a starter, or can we use closers?
You could use any pitcher you want.
Mike Minor. No. I mean, peak Mariano Rivera.
Right. That's
yeah.
To me. I'd be if pitchers only pitch 1 inning, like as a thing, like Mariano would be the greatest pitcher of all time.
Yeah.
Especially in his peak. But I mean, he also pitched for 20 years.
Yeah.
And he was
his peak
almost
was
as
like
dominant
10 years. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you get that. Are you part of that argument that you don't want to count? Are you a part of the relief pitchers shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame type of argument? Right.
No.
So of course I come from New York, and I was a Yankee fan during that period. So to me, like Enter Sandman and him cut like that, like he was my favorite player. And it's like he was so dominant in 1 or even 2 innings. That's like, if that was the game, like look at his underlying metrics. He had dead ball era stats.
Right. Yeah. He was like just better than everybody. It's kind of just one of those. It's not fair. I would like to see him as a starter for a couple of years just to see what happened. I mean, he wasn't built that way.
He originally was a star,
but not after he was good. Like after he figured out what to do.
Right.
I mean, I don't actually wish they would have, because then that would have ruined everything. But I'm curious. Like I'm curious with those guys, how far could they have stretched that? Like when you're that good, but it's not like this huge arsenal of pitches. I think he still would have been absolutely amazing as a starter.
Right, because he came up from the minors as a starter, and then they used him as a bullpen guy before John Wetland, and then they got rid of Wetland, and Rivera was the closer for the next 19 years.
Next 400 years.
Right.
The guy was really good.
Okay. I think
I love talking about great pitchers. I'm going to go watch like some Pedro and some Randy Johnson, some peak like Felix and Kershaw and Maddox, all these guys. It's exciting. I love the pitchers that just no one can hit them when they're on.
Right. Better than the batters. To me, I'm not as excited. I'm one of those freak people that liked like 80s baseball, that Cardinals, Royals, kind of like pitchers duels, 3-2 games, bunting people over, stealing bases, sack flies, kind of. Now I watch baseball and it's kind of like, strikeout, walk, home run. Like, I don't know. We're just old people that just
since we've already talked about tennis, it's like I prefer watching Bjorn Borg and Jimmy Connors play for 7 hours rather than just everything's an ace or put away a volley on the first shot. Like I like everything about the olden days.
Right,
I like off my lawn.
Right, tennis. I liked like Boris Becker.
Oh yeah,
Sampras. I like the serve and volley guys.
That's kind of Becker's kind of where it started. He started to ruin the whole thing. It was cool when he he was like one of the first bombers. Let's get this point over in 2 shots, and it was cool.
Right, him and like Ivanisevic back then.
That guy was amazing. I don't know if you.
I know my
his
tennis
serve
stuff.
was amazing. Yeah,
are you impressed that I know my 80s and 90s tennis?
I am. That's actually fantastic.
I played tennis when I was in high school.
Okay, well there you go. I was just Stefan Edberg was my my favorite guy back then.
Now my favorite was Jim Courier.
Wow, yeah.
Only because he played like number one. I've red hair, and I played with the same grip. I was a baseline heavy topspin. Like Jim Courier played with the Eastern grip, with the back. I could never do that, but I'm just like, I like the baseline play.
Yeah.
And he only was good for maybe a total of maybe 4 or 5 years. But like everyone like Agassi, and I found him to be like just like all it's great return to serve, but like I didn't like all the flash and stuff.
He was fun when he came up. It was with the hair.
Yeah, Agassi versus Chang. I remember those matches.
Yeah, Chang.
We could reminisce about tennis, baseball. What else are we doing? This is what you woke up for early. I know you love these early days. We have to wake up at like 4 a.m. in order to write your article because there's a slate this early.
It's exciting. But then I feel like I'm probably going to take tonight off, and I'm grilling wings tonight. Probably go see a movie. It's going to be like, the night off. It's going to be great.
Be great. But if you don't want to take the night off, tune back in at 6:30 Eastern for free crunch time. So I don't know who's going to be on. It's going to be Roth, STL Cards, and Andre. That's 6:30 Eastern tonight. You can hit the notification bell to know when we go live. Hit the subscribe button if you're new here. Give us some likes on your way out the door. So, geez, to close this out, lock of the day. Lock of the day is Bumgarner complete game shutout and Yanni Hernandez 3 home runs. Right? Is that what
right?
It is? Right.
3 homers, 3 steals for Yanni.
Right. A 3-for-3 game. Right.
Right.
Okay. So for Cheese, Jordan Blender HD. And that has been, I believe the name of the show is Crunch Time, but it may be wrong, but you'll see it on the thumbnail anyway. I'll see you tomorrow on the DFS pregame show at 11 o'clock Eastern. So until then, we're out of here.